Hey there, today on the
Bandrew podcast. It
says podcast, I'll be addressing being called out. I'm going to be trying to turn a Shure SM7B into a Neumann TLM103 and other stuff too, so stick around. And the first thing that I need to address is where that introduction clip came from, because it is bonkers. That is a clip of Tony Hinchcliffe from the Kill Tony podcast saying my name and my YouTube channel. What? That is not something I imagined would happen. In a million years, I never could have conceived of a path where those words out of his mouth, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But on episode 714 of Kill Tony, I'll link it in the description, Sarah Sloan, a friend, mentioned my name, and that occurred. Absolutely boggles my mind, but that's kind of irrelevant, because the reason I want to discuss this is to give Sarah props, because I thought her minute was hilarious. I don't think the audience gave it what it deserved. Very funny person. She is also an incredibly kind person and an incredibly competent person, as she pointed out in the episode, which cracked me up. I swear I am competent. But she got a job offer from Tony in that episode, and that is one of the coolest things that I have ever seen in that show. I watched the show back in 2018, 2019, and then came back to it in 2022-ish, 2023-ish, and of all the stuff that I have seen, that's one of the coolest moments. I could not be happier for Sarah. She is such a great person, and she is going to do such a great job in that role. I cannot wait to see what she's able to do. I can't wait to see her excel in that position. And on the note of Excel, hey, if you ever need help with Excel, holler. That's my bread and butter. I love Excel. I will help how I can. But I just wanted to take a moment and congratulate Sarah. Well done. Keep up the hilarious stuff, and best of luck in the new role. You are going to do such an awesome job. Couldn't happen to a nicer person. Well done. And in other news, I got called out by a professional boom operator, a fellow YouTuber, a fellow podcaster whose podcast is on the Geeks Rising podcast network, the same network as this show. None other than SoundSpeed's Alan. And he was talking about microphone reviews and the absurdity of some of the tests that are done in microphone reviews. So I am going to play a highlight reel of that episode. I'll throw a link to the full episode so you can watch that, but then we will reconvene and discuss.
When you watch microphone reviews, there are a lot of very ridiculous tests. When you take a dynamic microphone and you start to back off more than about 6 to 9 inches away from that thing, it is not going to sound good anymore. Another useless test is talking off axis into a microphone. The keyboard test, hitting a keyboard, it almost always sounds the exact same. If you're concerned that much about your keyboard, don't get yourself a noisy keyboard. This stuff should be common sense. I'm going to appeal to the masses. Please stop thinking that some microphone is going to magically do something that only software can do.
How dare you, Alan? I am hurt. I cannot believe that you would say those kinds of things about me. That you would say those kinds of things about the microphone reviews that I have made. That you would denigrate the tests that I have done 700 times, essentially meaning I have made the same video more than 700 times. How dare you? It really doesn't bother me, but I think he raises some interesting points, and I want to address them. First off, does pretty much every single microphone sound like trash when recorded 2 to 4 feet or more indoors? Undeniably, it's going to sound bad. Secondly, regardless of whether a microphone is dynamic or condenser, is it going to pick up a clicky keyboard? Yeah, that's undeniable as well. It's inescapable. But does every single microphone reject the same from the sides, and does it sound the same from the sides? No, It's not going to be the biggest contributing factor to microphone selection, but I think that is good information to have. So even though some of the tests that I do are useless, they're not needed, they're ridiculous, and they should be common sense, why do I continue to include them? Many of us audio people do understand. We know that no microphone is going to be magic. It's not going to eliminate background noise. You're still going to be able to hear the clicky keyboard. If you're 4 feet away, it's going to sound like trash. If your mom's screaming at you to clean up your room, that's going to be picked up as well. We understand that. I don't tailor and I don't cater my videos to the audio experts, though. I try to cater my videos to people who may be beginners. And with beginners, I don't think they're going out and watching 100 videos about microphones. I try not to assume they are coming into a video with any prior audio knowledge. And I still fail at that in some regards, but I try. I do my best. But how does that impact my videos and what I choose to continue to include in my reviews? I try to remember that somebody coming to one of my videos, that may be the first video about a piece of audio gear that they have ever seen. So they don't understand the difference between dynamic or condenser. They don't understand proper microphone etiquette. They may think, I'm going to buy this microphone. The only place I can put it is 4 feet away from me above my computer monitor. And since it's a $100, $200, $400 microphone, it's going to sound great. If they are coming in with that belief, me including the test of the microphone 4 feet away and them hearing, oh wow, that sounds terrible, I am essentially giving them proof you cannot use this microphone 4 feet away. SM7B, TLM103, MKH416 indoors, untreated room, gonna sound bad. Even a decently treated room, gonna sound bad. So now they have that information that previously they hadn't. Same thing with a clicky keyboard. They may think, oh, I'm going to get the SM7B or the RE20 or some other dynamic because that will reject all the clicky clackies from my Cherry MX Blue switches. By including that test, I am giving them a point of reference to understand, oh wow, even this microphone that everybody says is great at rejecting background noise still picks that up. Also, there are slight differences between microphones where some do reject it a little bit more. It is kind of negligible, but if somebody is looking for the absolute best microphone for their situation and they do have clicky keyboards, that does give them a little bit of information, but it's at the same time also eliminating the idea of, oh, this microphone, because people say it's good at rejecting background noise, will reject the most obnoxious keyboard sound ever. No, it won't. I am sure that was I probably clipped the microphone. I am so sorry about that. How embarrassing. So by including these tests in every single one of my reviews, I am providing beginners with a reference to demonstrate that no, this microphone, regardless of price, regardless of microphone type, will not sound good 4 feet away. It will not reject a bunch of background noise, a clicky keyboard, a mom screaming at you from across the house. That is all still going to be picked up, whether the microphone is 50, 100, 5,000. Doesn't matter. So although these may seem like absurd tests, especially to those who are acclimated to audio or in deep in audio and understand all of this kind of like second nature, I think including them addresses questions and addresses misconceptions that a lot of beginners may have, and by doing so, hopefully reduces the amount of incorrect purchases, unnecessary purchases, and ultimately reduces the amount of bad audio. So that is my reason for including all of these tests that audio people think are silly. I totally get their perspective. For them, it is useless. For anybody who is deep in audio, who have watched hundreds of videos, It is silly, it is useless, but for a beginner who watches 1 or 2 videos, I think it's giving very useful information and a much better understanding of the capabilities, the possibilities of audio that they can get out of different microphones, or the inability of microphones to work magic. I think that's a good piece of information for beginners to have because they think, I'm going from a laptop mic to a $100 USB mic. It's going to give me much better sound and it's going to fix all the problems. Nope. If you have a bunch of problems in the room, it's just going to pick up on those more. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand who are just getting in. The better the microphone, the more it's going to pick up all of the flaws in your environment, in the room that you're in. And yeah, that's a disappointment for a lot of people. So hopefully I'm helping. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just making things worse, but that's why I do what I do. Alan, thank you very much for posting that podcast episode. I absolutely loved it. I was laughing out loud when you talked about it was, when somebody actually requested, hey, I want you to go outside your room and yell so I can hear what it would sound like on the microphone when my mom is yelling at me to do my chores. That was a request that I had. Another request which makes me laugh out loud is, hey, I bought the SM7B, a $400 microphone. Will an XLR to USB cable be sufficient for it? And, it hurts me so. It hurts me so just thinking, I'm going to spend $400 on a microphone and then there's no preamp, but the converter I will buy is $10. That's what we'll do. It hurts me. It hurts my soul. Leave my baby alone. Leave the SM7B alone. All right. I am going to leave the Sound Speeds podcast episode 34 linked in the episode notes. Go check it out. That is all that I wanted to discuss there. Let's jump to what I have been testing. And you know what? I am on a new broadcast dynamic microphone. It is always a good day when I can say that. A couple of years ago, there were a lot of them. They were very budget. It got redundant. It got boring. This is a higher end broadcast dynamic from Audix. This is the PDX520, and I am running it into the Universal Audio X8, no processing, no nothing, flat mode on this thing, and that's what you've been hearing. This is a $400 broadcast dynamic. I wanted to try the PDX720. I just didn't have the guts to pull the $800 purchase on that just yet. I wanted to start with the more affordable option and see how good this is before jumping up and doubling the cost. What more could it do to justify an $800 price point? That's crazy. 2x the price of the 7B, almost 2x the price of the RE20, 2x the price of the Earthworks Ethos, more than the Neumann KMS 105. What does it do for that price? That's just so high. But anyway, this is the PDX520 and I have been in neutral mode. It has a couple of switches. I am going to get a little bit closer and this does not have the high pass filter on. This is the raw audio of the 520. And now I have turned on the high pass filter. This is with the high pass filter engaged. Here it is without the high pass filter turned on. This is without the high pass. And then here is with the high pass filter turned on. This is with the high pass filter on. All right, back in the neutral mode. This is the neutral mode, no high pass filter. And now I have turned on the presence boost, which is a 3.5 or 4 dB bump focused around 4K. This is presence boost. Here is the presence boost off, presence boost off. And again, here is with the presence boost turned on, the presence boost on the PDX520. So far, I have quite enjoyed how this thing sounds in the neutral mode. I have my electric guitar, acoustic guitar, and singing done. I used this in voice chat before. Something that I really liked about this design is the slant on the back of it. When I had this in my isolation cab, I was able to just look in and see if the switches were engaged, whereas something like the SM7B, I would need to tilt this and then actually adjust the switches and then tilt it back, and then I need to get the placement right. Because of this design, I didn't have to move the microphone at all. I just looked in, flipped the switch or flipped it the other way, and I was good to go. So that's just something that I found that worked really well for my specific situation where I have an ISO cab that is very small and kind of a pain to work in. I mean, for an ISO cab, it's quite large, but you get what I mean. It's not like it's in a room. Okay, that's what I have been testing. I would love to hear from you. What do you think of the Audix PDX520? Let me know in the comments down below. Now let's jump to what you had to say, and the first comment comes from QuartPoo1, and they say, I'm here from Kill Tony. QuartPoo, thank you very much for the comment, and that got 37 likes, which is baffling. So if you are also here from Kill Tony, thank you very much. I am honored that you have spent any amount of time watching or listening to this show. Admittedly, this is very different from something like Kill Tony. I don't do anything like that. I am just a dweeb sitting in a bedroom talking about audio gear and content creator news and YouTube and all of that stuff. So there's very little overlap. But thank you for coming by and leaving a comment and watching for any amount of time. I really do appreciate that. Next, we have a comment from Honiko6541, and he says, Hey Bandrew, just wondering, could you give some more insight about why you say that you think the goal with processing should strictly be to fix minor issues and not completely transform the audio? I agree as a general rule that it is a good thing to learn to record everything as good as you possibly can from the get-go and then polishing. But why do you think doing excessive EQ, shaping the sound exactly how you want it to sound, shouldn't be how people go about it? Not an attack on you, just wondering what your opinion about it is. Love the content that you make. Honiko, thank you very much for the comment and the questions. The reason that I suggest people don't use processing to completely alter their sound and instead just use processing to polish already good audio is because I'm not just referring to EQ, I'm not just referring to tone, I am talking about all plugins. So EQ, compression, denoise, spectral denoise, mouth DeClick, de-essers, any and all plugins. I have noticed that a lot of people just don't want to spend the time or energy to fix bad audio in the room, reducing background noise, trying to get good microphone placement, learning good microphone technique, and instead they just use plugins as crutches. They would much rather use an AI denoise plugin as opposed to spending the time to get the right microphone, get the good placement, turn off fans that are going on around them, and in turn, they end up with audio that is very artifacty because that AI plugin, that spectral denoise plugin, has a lot of artifacts. It can be very destructive. The same thing goes for pretty much every other type of corrective plugin. You can easily go overboard and destroy your audio, at least to my ears, my opinion. It can destroy your audio. With EQ, sure, you can use EQ to alter the sound and get the exact sound that you want. People do that all the time for music. I am approaching this more from a podcaster and live streamer perspective, and I don't think the aggressive EQs that I have seen and heard are really necessary for solo voice. I don't think you need a 12 dB low shelf or a 16 dB high shelf or a 5.5 dB narrow Q cut at one point. I don't think you need to get that crazy and aggressive. If you want to, more power to you. You do you, baby boo or whatever. It's not my audio. I am fine with you doing whatever you want. I am simply advocating for subtlety over aggressiveness. Another reason why I think this is important is I have never encountered a situation where somebody said, you know what, that processing, That was too subtle. They should have used a 6 dB bump as opposed to a 1.5 dB high shelf. How dare they? I couldn't listen to it. Trash. But I have heard so many instances of people saying, holy crap, did you hear that massive V-shape Babby's first EQ curve with 12 dB of compression? That was unlistenable trash, and it belongs where it was seen, on Twitch. No offense to all the Twitch streamers out there. I'm sure your audio was great. That was unfair. But I hear that quite often. The processing of audio can be so bad because people get so aggressive trying to completely reshape it that they drive away potential audience members because it is so unnatural and offensive to the ears. So I think it's much better to be subtle with your processing, and you're able to be subtle with your processing by having good recording etiquette, by reducing all the negative aspects in the real world before you hit record, by getting audio as good as you can before you hit record. That's why I advocate for that. Of course, this is just my perspective. There are many audio engineers who are actual audio engineers who do this for a living. They will get really aggressive with EQ and full mixes and get fantastic results. I am not denigrating them. I am not saying they should not do that. I am just talking about, hey, podcasters, maybe you don't need a 12 dB high shelf with 36 decibels of compression. It's not necessary, guys. There's a rare instance where it was irrelevant. That's an outlier. That's an outlier. Not necessary for me to go into that. That's my take on it. I advocate subtlety because you're not going to go overboard. You're not going to be offensive if you're subtle with your processing, but it's very easy to be offensive with your processing if you get really aggressive with EQ, compression. You can introduce a bunch of artifacts with all of these corrective plugins like spectral denoise, those AI voice denoise things, declicking, de-essers, deplosives, any of them. Easy to ruin your audio, so be subtle because you're less likely to ruin it then. So I hope that gave you some insight into my perspective, but again, this is just my perspective. You do what you want. More power to you. Thank you again, Honiko, for the question. Appreciate you. Next, we have a comment from D6BF6AF4, and they say, why adding trebles to SM7B when these can be obtained and taken off using TLM103 or LCT440 or with a bunch of pencils? All right, thank you very much, D6, for the comment and the question. Why was I using the 7B and adding a couple dB of treble when I had the option of using the TLM103 and reducing the treble with an EQ? The simple answer is I'm lazy. I had the SM7B out, it's easy to set up, and I just wanted to add a little bit of treble. That's the bottom line. But now I have the 103 set up directly next to the SM7B, and the capsules are aligned pretty much exactly. The gain on the SM7B is 57 decibels, and the TLM103 has 29 decibels of gain. There is no processing on either of these right now. There is one big difference between these two microphones outside of the tone, and outside of the fact that one is a condenser and the other is a dynamic. And that would be the fact that the SM7B has a big foam windscreen on it, and it has a lot more pop and wind protection compared to the 103. So if I talk into both of them, please provide pizza pronto. Please provide pizza pronto. That's the 103. And on the SM7B, please provide pizza pronto. Please provide pizza pronto. The SM7B should do a much better job at plosive rejection, albeit I am not monitoring. I can't tell you for certain until I listen back, but that is why I like using the SM7B. First off, I enjoy how it sounds. Secondly, it is a bit forgiving. It has protections there where the proximity effect won't be too aggressive because the capsule is recessed. It also has this foam windscreen, so it's going to help reduce a bit of the plosives or breathing if you run into any issues there or if you're susceptible to plosives. I also find it to be very soft and easy to listen to, so if you have a harsh voice like mine, it makes it a little bit easier to listen to for long periods. But sometimes I do like altering the sound of it ever so slightly, and although a 2 dB high shelf is adding some treble, I really don't think that's the most aggressive thing, and I don't think it gets it anywhere near something like the TLM-103. But just because I thought this would be fun, I want to EQ match the TLM-103 to match the SM7B and see how that sounds. And then I want to EQ match the SM7B to the TLM-103 and see how that sounds. What you're hearing right now is the Shure SM7B. This is the SM7B. This is the Neumann TLM-103. This is the TLM-103. And here is the TLM-103 being EQ matched to sound like the SM7B. And here is the SM7B again, so you can hear them side by side. Again, here is the TLM-103 EQ matched to the SM7B, and here is the actual SM7B. Now, in my opinion, this will be much more interesting, but here is the raw audio from the TLM-103. Jumping over to the raw audio of the SM7B, this is the raw audio of the SM7B. And now here is the SM7B EQ matched to sound more like the Neumann TLM-103. This is the SM7B EQ matched, jumping over to the TLM-103 so you can hear if it's at all close. This is the actual 103. Back on the SM7B again with the EQ match engaged to try to get it to sound like the 103. And here is the Neumann TLM-103 yet again, the raw audio. Was it at all close or was it way, way, way off? You let me know in the comments down below. Next, we have a comment from Dylan Beamer, and he says, "Man, I wanted to hear those 402 clicks." Dylan, ask and ye shall receive. I recorded a quick sample demoing the output clicks only as the most aggressive setting that I could find, and I made some changes to make it as gross as possible. So here you go. Here is my plugin that removes mouth clicky clackies, but I want to make some adjustments to the settings. That is so gross. That is so incredibly gross. Let's hear how destructive this was to the actual output audio, though. All right, here is a quick spoken word sample of the SM7B. I will first provide you with the raw audio and then the processed audio. As soon as I engage the plugin, you can sound that it starts to sound very dull and almost underwater. Plugins like this can be extremely destructive, and that's why it's so important to be subtle with this type of processing. And next we have a comment from Sean Milo, and he says, "You could probably just adjust the loudness of your podcast and do nothing else and nobody would notice. This isn't a criticism. As you said, you fix the audio before you press record. Also, watching your video as I open my Amazon boxes of things I purchased, lying in the bathtub with my saved payment info on my phone." Sean, thank you very much for the comment. I love hearing about how you scroll on Amazon on your phone in your bathtub. Just buy stuff. Thank you for that image. Exactly what I needed. As far as your statement, I could just loudness normalize my podcast with no other processing and nobody would notice. That's what we have been doing this week. I have not done any processing to this audio. All I did was drop it into RX10 and use loudness control and loudness normalize to -16 LUFS. That is all that I did. No compression, no de-esser. No high pass filter, no mouth DeClick, no bus compressor, just the raw audio. How was it? Did you notice? Did you think, oh my gosh, this week the processing was way too subtle, I can't handle it, and then click off? Or did you think, oh my gosh, the processing this week was so aggressive, I couldn't listen to it? What did you think? Maybe not the best idea to do this with a microphone I have never used before, but hey, I like to live on the edge. So, Sean, thank you for that suggestion. Thank you for unintentionally challenging me to do this. Or maybe you knew that I would read your comment and think, oh God, I have to try that. So yes, that is what I did today. Hopefully it's been tolerable. I hope so. I haven't even been monitoring. I have really been enjoying not wearing headphones. I shouldn't do that. I'm going to set a bad example and give people ideas. I need to continue to wear headphones just to lead by example, I suppose. That is it for what you had to say. Now we are jumping to value for value because this is a V for V podcast. What that means, no ads, no paywall, no nothing. I put the show out there. If you enjoy it, I just ask you return value, whether it be time, talent, or treasure. You can share the show with somebody because it's a long-form podcast covering multiple topics. It does not do well. The algorithms hate it. Especially because I constantly criticize YouTube, and the main distribution platform for this show is YouTube. So sharing it is very helpful. Financial support is also incredibly helpful because it helps keep the bills paid, the lights on, the microphones from humming, the brain inside my head, anything and everything. So we are going to focus on that. First, we have 50, I need to look this up. First, we have 50 Czech dollars from D6BF6AF4, and they say, I would love to see one special test episode where you'd record self-noise of as many mics as you could stand and amplify them to some reasonable loudness, say -6 dBFS, so I could compare if there are different characters of self-noise. I recommend to name the episode Dr. Scott Gesammeltschweigen, inspired by the noblest Heinrich Bull. I apologize to everybody for my terrible mispronunciation of those words and of those names. My deepest apologies. I am terrible. I am a typical American who does not understand any other language. My apologies, but thank you very much for the support. As far as carrying out that test, that would be a lot more in-depth than just setting up 50 microphones, hitting record, and then leveling them. Because I would need to make sure that they are level matched in the analog realm before I hit record to make sure I am amplifying the actual self-noise of the microphone the same as opposed to amplifying preamp noise. So what I would need to do in order to accomplish that is first buy a coaxial speaker. What that means is the woofer and the tweeter are in line, so it has the full frequency range from a single point, and then point the microphone at that, the same distance, and level match every microphone to the same level, -18 dBFS, something like that, and then I could compare the self-noise of each microphone in post. I could do minor adjustments to fine-tune them, and then we could hear the difference in self-noise loudness as well as self-noise characteristics. But that's a non-trivial test to do because first off, I do not have a coaxial speaker, so I'm missing the hardware to accomplish step number 1 properly. And then the process of doing that and ensuring consistent and repeatable placement at the exact same distance to the capsule, that introduces another level of difficulty. So it would be very interesting. I don't deny that. That would be a fun test. Maybe not fun. Interesting. The fun would be in the results, not in the actual scientific application and repeatability that would be required to do that properly. So hopefully one day I will be able to do that, but currently I don't have the required hardware to accomplish it. Thank you very much for the support. I hope that was a sufficient answer for the time being. One day I will hopefully be able to get around to that. Next, we have 2 USD from Incredibly Handsome, aka Enrique Couto, and he says, I can't say that I'm a genius in the biz, but making a living making feature films is a hell of a thing. I've managed for nearly 11 years, and I'm in a bit of debt, but I'm highly productive. Would be happy to talk about it any time. Not for the faint of heart. Enrique, thank you very much for the 2 USD. I would love to jump on a call sometime, or if you ever decide to share this on your podcast, I bet that would be a fun conversation between you and DD. Does DD work in film as well? I don't think I've heard him mention that. Is he just a film fanatic, a filmographer? What's the word? A cinemaphile? Or does he also work in the film industry? Because that does seem like a very difficult industry. And if the 2 of you work in the film industry, it would be very interesting to hear your discussion and hear your different perspectives and approaches to succeeding and making a living doing that. But if not, let's jump on a Discord call sometime. That would be a ton of fun to hear how you make that work. Thank you again, Enrique. I appreciate you. And go check out his YouTube channel at Incredibly Handsome Outstanding movie podcast called Do You Even Movie? Well, do you, punk? All right, that's not in the name. I added that, sorry. Next, we have €50 from none other than TechMed Rainer Richter, and he says, Danke. And then we have €75 from none other than TechMed Rainer Richter, and he says, Danke. Raina, thank you so much for the 2 super thanks on the last 2 episodes. I really do appreciate it. Your support continues to baffle me, but I am deeply appreciative of it and of you. I love knowing that you get value out of this show, and the support really does help keep everything running smoothly, the bills paid, the hosting up, the podcast going out. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the support over the years. Really do appreciate you. And that goes for you as well, Enrique, and D6BF6AF4. It is because of all of you this show is up this week, and this show is ad-free. So if you are somebody who enjoys this show being ad-free, it's thanks to them. So leave them a thank you comment. Hey, thank you, Raina. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, D6. You rock. I agree, they do rock. And we are going to do one more thing this week. It is not necessarily a favorite thing of the week. It is more of a recommendation. Something that I love doing is watching movies that are related to holidays that are going on. I will watch Thanksgiving horror movies, Christmas horror movies, Valentine's Day horror movies, 4th of July horror movies. It's really just horror movies whenever there's a holiday. But when I was looking for Easter-based horror movies, none of them looked good. I've never come across one that really stood out, so I didn't find one of those to watch, and therefore nothing to recommend there. But there is one Easter movie that stands out above all others, for me at least. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. Judge me all you want. Mallrats, a Kevin Smith movie, his second movie, and it challenged his career. It did not do well in the theaters, but it is one of my favorite movies. I've probably watched this more than any other movie ever in reality, because for a while I would just put this on and fall asleep to it. It is just that good. But this movie has the Easter Bunny in it, and the Easter Bunny may or may not be accosted. So that is why I am recommending it. As soon as I am done recording and editing, I am going to go check this out again for the 1 millionth time, because it's Easter and that's what you do. Happy Easter, by the way, if you celebrate. I hope it was great. If you go to church, I hope it was an amazing service. All of that. And I think that's going to wrap up this week. Thank you very much for coming by. I know there are a million things you could do with your time, million things vying for your attention. So if you watch this for any amount of time, I appreciate it. So thank you very much. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, I should be back. I should be talking at you, with you, about you. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Whoa. Whoa. Boop.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.